Everyone, how's it going? Well, it's April, spring has officially come, and it's a beautiful day out. The room is flooded! Yeah, nature is kinda going nuts, but anyway, it's springtime, usually associated with lively colors, joy, and looking up in the clear blue skies, and kinda gets me in the spirit to talk about one of the heroes that made us believe that we could go beyond those skies, Captain Carrot. I kid, of course we're gonna talk about Superman, in particular the first issue of Superman for All Seasons. First published in 1998, and written by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, this 4-part miniseries, as you can guess from the creative team, was meant to be a spin-off of the famous Batman The Long Halloween storyline. But while that was a 12-part noir-focused story that had each issue take place on a different holiday, this would focus on the 4 seasons. You gotta wonder what they would have done if they did a Wonder Woman book. I'd say colors, but that's kind of a Marvel thing they did. Days of the week, years, different wars. Leave it in the comments on what you guys think they would go for. Now, I'll be honest here, I rarely heard people talk about this book, and whenever I ask, they just respond with, oh, it's Loeb's take on Superman origin. But as time passed, I did start hearing more positive things about it. Did it earn it? Well, let's start this new line of reviews with Superman for All Seasons, Issue 1, Spring, and find out. And to help me with this journey, I got my buddy Captain Lunar to join. Take a bow, Lunar. Lunar? I've been trying to get a hold of him for a while. Oh, well. Let's start this review. Warning spoilers. We begin with a narrator who talks about how, though Superman has been known by many names, like the Man of Steel, and how he was able to do things like leap tall buildings in a single bound, change the courses of mighty rivers. I guess it's more impressive than being more powerful than a locomotive. And of course, being faster than a speeding bullet. But then goes on about how before he was Superman, he was just someone's son, his son, revealing that the narrator is Jonathan Kent, Clark's adopted father, which is the first big thing Loeb does to help differentiate itself from other origin stories. Despite Clark being the main character, it's actually not told in his point of view. Instead, just like the seasons, the narrator changes, and we see how everyone reacts to Superman as he begins his journey into being a hero. Jonathan is plowing a field, but catches a snag as a huge rock gets in the way. He tries to get out himself, but struggles. Luckily, Clark comes in just in time to help him lift it, but Jonathan is concerned, and Clark notices. He asks what's wrong, but he doesn't answer, instead heading back to the house for supper. After a nice dinner with longtime childhood friend Lana Lang and her aunt, Jonathan talks to Martha regarding his worries about Clark, and that though they knew he would be different, since alien baby, he's still worried that his son could be in danger, and though he does hope to keep his concerns from Clark so he won't worry, it turned out he gained a super hearing and he heard everything keeping him up. The following day, Clark, Lana, and his fellow childhood friend Pete Ross walks around their hometown of Smallville talking about what they're planning to do for the summer and after graduation, with Pete immediately talking about traveling the world and how he wishes that he could win the lottery, but not to be as generous as Lex Luthor. Yeah, we'll discuss this more down the line, but in this canon, Lex is more like the Mr. Beast and less of the, well, we'll insert millionaire name here. Of course, it's a front, but I can't jump ahead. While some onlookers comment on how Clark and Lana resemble Clark's parents, Clark overhears and feels a bit awkward and leaves with the excuse of missing an appointment for a haircut, only to have it even more awkward as, well, the clippers break as the barber attempted to cut it. Clark freaks out since he's worried that he might have revealed his secret, but luckily the barber is none the wiser. It was still weird he never put 2 and 2 together once Superman showed up, though maybe what happened next made him forget cause Clark runs off as he sees that a massive tornado is heading towards the town. Luckily, Zack Snyder isn't writing this, so Clark actually steps in and saves the day, even did it without casualties. Loeb could have made it darker by having Jonathan or Martha die, but nope, keep it light. Clark starts to think about what he did and considers that maybe he shouldn't keep his powers a secret. Even talking to a local church pastor, Linquist, who talks about how he believes that the Lord puts everyone on a certain path, but the one who'd finally push Clark would be Lana, as the night after graduation, Clark would reveal himself to her, even taking her on a flight inspired by the original 78 film. She would convince Clark to leave Smallville and make a difference, ending with a kiss and promising that he would come back. Time passes, Clark would head to Metropolis, he would get a job as a reporter at the Daily Planet, meet his friends Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane, who at this point is dating Lex Luthor, and you can tell that Lex is living it big since he still has hair. And of course, they'd all be introduced to Superman, who saves a kid who... Okay, what? Why was that kid on the ledge chasing a cat? Like, I know it's showing Superman saving a kid. Most iterations do that, but why a ledge? Like, usually they go with, like, stopping a car accident, or stopping debris from landing on them, or they actually fall off a window. But seriously, this makes the Niagara Falls kid from the theatrical cut of Superman 2 look like a genius. Anyway, Superman has officially revealed himself to the world, and he flies off, with Lex watching him, saying it's going to be a long, hot summer. You might want to rephrase that, Lex. Just saying, fanfic writers are gonna have a field day. Anyway, this was a solid start to the series, and though I glossed over it for time, I gotta say the use of narration was very interesting, though that'll be more discussed in characters. Tone-wise, it's very much inspired by the Bronze Age, but doesn't feel like a straight-up copy of the original Man of Steel comics from the 1980s, being more focused on Smallville and the people around Clark, which I gotta give it to Loeb. He did do a solid job making Smallville feel lived in, and spending time with the people in its community. I also like that we never see Krypton here, which makes sense as a lot of it is told in Jonathan's point of view, and he really wouldn't have any idea of what Krypton would be like, which makes his fears on what could be happening to Clark even more prominent, and even gives us more time to focus on Smallville. Now with the characters, we of course have to start with Big Blue himself, Superman. Now, I've talked about Superman before, but unlike the previous comics I've covered, this is the first time I'm diving into a very early life, where at this point Clark is more timid and seems more like a gentle giant. He's uncertain about himself, and hell, despite not having an inner monologue, we still can tell what he's going through and the character growth that would lead Clark to eventually become Superman. Next we got Lana Lang, Clark's first love, sorry Laurie Lamaris, and first friend he ever made. Unlike Lois, who in more modern depictions is written as the no-nonsense city girl who's straight to the point that we all know and love, Lana is not a total opposite, but is more closer to the girl next door, which makes sense since she is the girl next door. She's not at all timid by any definition, but has her comfort zone and doesn't seem to be interested in leaving Smallville and just staying with Clark, at least until she learns of Clark's secret. As for how, well, that's a story for another time, but for now I'll just say though that she always had good intentions, but like how she nudged Clark into doing the right thing, which makes sense because she is literally the girl next door. And finally we'll wrap it all up with the Kents. Both are going through the same thing, but the approach is very different. While Jonathan tends to keep things to himself and save it all for the narration, Martha's more open about her concerns and feelings. They both love their son and are scared of the possibility of losing their child. Martha is also the only one who can get Jonathan to open up, who even admits that she can be pushy and that's what he loves about her, which is shown not just from their interaction, but also how Martha interacts with Clark, as she is the one who is pushing him to do what he believes is right. As for Jonathan, his narration is very interesting, though do expect a lot of farm metaphors, but luckily it's written so well that it never comes off as either annoying or hilarious. But the point is, in his narration, he shows how much he truly does love his son and looks back on the days of when he took care of him and how he's grateful that his son got to live in a place like Smallville. Tim Sale, of course, is on art and still does an amazing job, though I won't lie, how he draws Clark is a bit jarring when I first saw it. I just felt like his face was too small, but Sale would change his style of drawing Clark later on. But in here, it is something that takes time getting used to. Also, unlike the Long Halloween where the colors were more harder and darker to fit the tone it was going for, this one goes in a much more lighter take, very similar to Daredevil Yellow, going for a more watercolor look, though this time with Jarne Hansen on color, and it looks amazing. Probably the best being when Jonathan is looking up at the night sky with it reflecting in his glasses, and later when he and Clark are looking up at the sunrise. Just a beautiful scene and captures the feeling of the season. On a whole, Superman for All Seasons issue 1 was a great start for this miniseries and definitely a great Smallville story. Sure, it's not filled too much with action, but definitely makes up for it with great character moments and pretty solid storytelling. Even if that save at the end was pretty weird, but overall, it's definitely a nice feel-good book. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates. Next time, we're going to talk about a comic that shares its simple themes of heroes fighting a man with too much power, as we talk about
Sorry I'm late. Turns out that getting sucked into a black hole really advances time.
Damn, well, guess that explains why you look a little different from the last time I saw you.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you have an archenemy that can manipulate black holes.
Yikes. Well, sorry, man, but you missed the whole review.
Yeah, I really wouldn't recommend getting an arch enemy like that, but seems you have things settled up here. Well, without further ado, Captain Lunar, away!
I gotta stop with these collabs.
Hey, Biz!
Ah, shit.